As you make your way outside of Batavia, New York, headed through the countryside, you'll see many green fields, a lot of trees, and you may find yourself in a little town known as East Bethany. As you travel into East Bethany, you'll notice that again, there isn't much, but you may wind up standing face to face with a large V-shaped, hospital-looking building. This location was once known as the Genesee County Poor Farm. Now, this poor farm specifically has become many things throughout the years, such as also a vendor market, antique market, as well as a paranormal hotspot that has been visited and on television through many of shows. But what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the history that has gone on and some of the first-hand knowledge and stories of experiences as a guest, if you will, within this building. A notice was placed in the local paper, the Batavia Times, and it read as follows: "Notice is hereby given that the Genesee County Poorhouse will be ready for the reception of paupers on the first day of January 1827. Those eligible for assistance were regular habitual drunks, lunatics, either by disease or even including grief or loss of reason from old age, paupers or state paupers, which were blind, lame, old, disabled, or vagrants, were all eligible for so-called assistance." In 1828, a building was constructed that attached to the original building, this one for lunatics and paupers who committed misconduct. The insane were housed here also until 1887. In 1938, an addition was made for the infirmary wing. The Poor Farm was just that, a farm, self-sufficient, working farm with woods on about 200 acres. By providing food and fuel, it greatly reduced the cost to care for each person, or inmate as they were known as. They sold handmade goods, raised pigs, horses, chickens, ducks, grew vegetables, made jams and jellies. This included a bakery and a wood shop that the inmates would work at. This property was the Genesee County Poor Farm from 1827 until 1965, then becoming the Genesee County Nursing Home until 1974. Briefly after that, it was also known as the Genesee County Village, which was a co-op before closing and being renamed Rolling Hills Asylum. Those who passed away were buried in a cemetery on property. The cemetery had long been overgrown and forgotten until a memorial site was created in the adjoining Genesee County Park in 2004, honoring those who passed there from 1827 until the closing of the facility in 1974. There are over 1,700 documented deaths that took place during operation, and those were just the documented ones. Residents said to still be hanging around include Roy Krause, son of a prominent banker, sent at the age of 12 due to gigantism, reaching 7.5 feet tall, but he was always referred to as a gentle giant, and he can be seen around the building But a known hotspot is the Shadow People Hall, or second floor east wing. Roy passed away at the age of 62, still living in the facility. The second floor east wing, or that Shadow People Hall, is called so because typically on any given night, you can sit at the end of the hall on one side, and with just the light from the streetlights coming in and the ambient light around you, you can watch the shadows pass through the hall, almost as if they're visiting each door, each room. There's also known to be an apparition of a nurse that appears and makes her rounds on this floor. There's also said to be the spirit of a little girl named Elizabeth that wanders the building, often seen in the chapel, but she wanders around playing games. Her favorite seems to be hide and seek. I saw her on the second floor. Raymond is known to be a former maintenance worker on the property, one that passed many years ago and is believed to still be hanging around the boiler room. He often brings very uneasy feelings, especially towards women that wander and find their way down in his area. On the third floor, you find the staff and warden's quarters. One former warden passed of a heart attack in the room upstairs. Also often noted as bringing a feeling of uneasiness or being watched over is said to be that of Nurse Emma, who is one of the prominent head nurses of the facility during its functioning time. Maybe it's she who has been seen on the second floor, passing out meds and making her rounds. I've spent my fair share of time at Rolling Hills Asylum, always investigating, but also as a volunteer, there to help with the ghost hunts, the public investigations, also just regular cleanup of the building, because it seemed like it was always in a state of needing a little help somewhere. And any chance we could to try to help this location, a group of us, we jumped at it, because it was more about preservation of the location and some of the things we've experienced there that kept us going back. One of the first times I was there was with a long former owner that she used to host teen hunts. And my brother, being very interested in the paranormal also, was interested in this location. And I decided, okay, let's do this. Let's go check it out. So we booked it and we went out and we investigated it. As we walked through the building, we experienced a lot of knocks, bangs, noises, disembodied voices even. The third floor was the area where we got a lot of disembodied voices, but later on, come to find out, we'd get a lot of activity from the third floor. During my times visiting and volunteering there, we had a lot of activity, from doors moving on their own to banging from a shut door that you'd go in. It was in a closet, but the door was banging from the closet, so you'd go and open it expecting to find some type of an animal trapped inside or something. Nothing was there. I've experienced a lot of the hot spots, a lot of the claims that people have said with the giant shadow Roy that wanders the building. We used to go and try different experiments, like playing music for him to see if we'd get any type of reaction, even on the floor itself, from any of the possible spirits that were still residing there. And occasionally we would get activity. One place that really got me was that second floor east wing. Now, the first time I had gone, we were told that they call that the Shadow People Hall. If you just sit at the end and watch, you can watch the shadows moving back and forth. Almost like it's an active, busy nursing home or hospital, institution of some sort, and the patients are just wandering back and forth to each other's rooms. And I did experience seeing different shadows moving across the hall at a distance in that wing. something that was a little more troubling to me at first, and for a while, understandably, was that when you got to that wing, at the other end was a solarium type of room, an open room, lots of windows, because they believed sunlight therapy, actual feeling the sun beating on you was something that would help heal you. So they had rooms like this at the end of the hall. They had 2 big double doors that closed off between the hall and that room. When we had gone up there, the doors were closed. As we're walking through that hall, the doors would begin to rattle. They would shake. They would bang. And you could notice feet prints, footsteps, walking back and forth behind the door, the shadow of any light from outside coming into that room, and you could see something almost pacing back and forth, and it would stop, and the doors would bang. And when we'd go to check it out, go to try to figure out who's trying to prank us, who's doing this, there's nobody there. You'd open the door, and all you'd get is this heavy, almost oppressive feeling of, you shouldn't be here, and why did you do that? After many investigations, we had determined that from responses we had got, it was a gentleman that was up there, not so happy gentleman, and may possibly had lost his wife while residing there on the property many years ago. And his almost torment, his haunting, if you will, is being stuck in that area. And he would bang on these doors to try to get people to notice, to try to get some type of, almost like a cry for help. But it was more terrifying to most than anything else. Another experience I had there was down in the tunnel area. The group of us were investigating. We were using a spirit box to randomly go through, give us words, try to, the radios that just tick, 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 tick type thing. And we're listening to it. And at one point, the radio had said another team member's name. And I had said, oh, it just said your name. And she had said, no. And another guy from the team had said, yeah, I heard it too. And jokingly, we had talked back and forth. I said, yeah, it said your name. And I don't know if it thought I was arguing with her or what was happening. But when I leaned forward and told her, yeah, it said your name, I went to lean back and I got hit square between the shoulder blades. Hard enough that it visibly shook me. And the radio got knocked off of the shelf that it was sitting on and hit the floor and stopped. At that point, we all stopped, turned on the lights to see what could have caused it. There was nothing behind me. There was no one around me at the time that would have or could have hit me. But I definitely felt a blunt force right between my shoulder blades in that tunnel. Rolling Hills Asylum is definitely an interesting place with a lot of history. Being the old poor farm, being the place that basically the unwanted were left to be forgotten. And they seem very much vocal anytime I had been there about not wanting to be forgotten, about letting their voice, their presence be known within this building. And more often than not, you would experience something, from the screaming lady in the halls to the shadow people on the second floor. It was more often than not that we did get something or somebody interacting with us. I have 2 that are the craziest experiences that I had ever had at Rolling Hills. The first was a group of us were actually sitting on the second floor east wing. We were all investigating. It was a small group, maybe about 5 or 6 of us sitting there. Everybody that was in the building was with us in this group at this time, sitting here. And while we're investigating, we're sitting quietly, we're asking questions, we're trying to get EVPs. It sounds like there was another group in the building. but they were being loud and obnoxious, and it sounded like they were on one of the lower floors, maybe the first floor or even the basement level. We weren't sure, but we could definitely hear them. And this was a problem because we had locked ourselves within the building. Nobody else should be coming in, and if they are, they broke in and are trespassing. We had a former officer with us, police officer, that was carrying and instantly was ready to go check out what the problem was. About half of us got up. We decided we were going to investigate to try to scare them out, find them, catch them, do something, but figure out what this could have been. We went through multiple different ways and avenues to go through the building and to search the whole place, but there wasn't a window that was broken, there wasn't a door that was open, there wasn't anything out of place anywhere else in this building. And as we got down to the first and second floor, the voices just kind of stopped. It sounded like they were having a conversation, almost like they were having a party, laughing with each other, joking about things. But as soon as we got down to that area, everything went silent. We continued to search the building. We made sure the whole building was searched from top to bottom. The property around it, there was nobody there. It was still just us in the building, at least living. Two brothers and I decided, we were going to go out there, we were going to investigate for a little bit. And my one brother was asking, he wanted to see something scary. He wanted to check out what this paranormal, ghost hunting thing is all about. Does this really happen or what? So, of course, I made the calls. Yes, we have permission to come out. We can check out the building for a little while, investigate. So we take him out there. She had let us know that, let me know when you've arrived. I'm probably going to be working in the building some, doing some cleanup until you get here. Great, no problem. Over on the property is a little house. She had a pen out there with a little dog in the pen. As we arrive, the dog's barking. We go to check the door to the building because that's where she said she'd be, and it's locked, but it's locked from the inside. Not uncommon, very typical. So I bang on the door and I wait a minute. The dog continues to bark. We're getting no response. Maybe she didn't hear me, maybe she's in a further part of the building and didn't hear it. So I bang again. The dog still continuously barking. All of a sudden, you hear a female voice from over by the house go, "Hey!" And she yells at the dog to knock it off. The dog quit barking. We looked over thinking, okay, well, I don't know how it's locked from the inside, but look over. There's nobody there. There was nobody there at all, but the dog actually responded and quit barking to the woman telling it to stop barking. Well, everything was quiet. I banged on the door again. And a few minutes later, she came and she opened the door. And I had asked, is it possible somebody's at the house? Is it possible that somebody could have yelled to have the dog stop barking? And no, she was there by herself. She was the only one. And her dog was out there in the pen, safe, happy, healthy, good to go. But there was nobody else on the property. Needless to say, the brother who wanted to see something happen, wanted to check out the paranormal thing, he was a little unnerved at this point. At this point, he was questioning his decisions on even going out here to investigate this place when it's daytime, we haven't even stepped foot inside yet, and we've already heard an unexplained voice. The night didn't get much better for him between seeing a couple shadows moving through the hall and feeling somebody walk up on him. Almost like that presence of you're standing there and somebody steps up behind you. At that point, he was good for the night. He had experienced his unexplained. The Rolling Hills Asylum, with such a beautiful setting, such a dark, tragic history. Anyone who has spent any amount of time within its walls, be it as a patient, be it as an investigator, be it as a visitor, can tell you that after a while, as empty as it may seem, it houses a lot of memories, a lot of emotion, and it's sure to have taken some from you during your time there.